Morning, Engineer Kwate. Hope you're doing well this morning.
Good morning. I'm fine. I hope you're also fine.
Yes, please, I am.
I hope my audio is fine.
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
All right. Okay.
Are you able to check if you can share your screen?
Okay. Share my screen. Yes. Okay. So I should roll out the presentation, right?
Okay, so I would introduce you to the team briefly and then we begin with your presentation.
All right. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to Volume 1, Number 14 of Construmat's Weekly Knowledge Sharing Seminars. It's my pleasure to introduce our next esteemed speaker, Engineer Maximilian Kwate, a seasoned professional with over 14 years of hands-on experience in the West African sub-region energy sector. With a strong background in environmental engineering and a deep understanding of renewable energy, Engineer Kwate has played a significant role in shaping the energy landscape in Ghana. He holds an MBA in green energy and sustainable businesses from the Bologna Business School in Italy. He began his career as a municipal environmental engineer for the government of Ghana, where he contributed to the environmental initiatives for 2 years. Currently, Engineer Kwate serves as the Deputy Director for the Renewable Department at the Repower Authority and is a technical member of the National Energy Transition Committee. He has also served as a technical advisor on the renewable energy. He has also served as the technical advisor on renewable energy to the Honorable Minister for Energy in Ghana, where he played a vital role in projects such as utility tariff review and rationalization and the national energy transition. Engineer Kwate's dedication to renewable energy extends beyond his official roles. He's a board member of the Industrial Advisory Board for the University of Energy and Natural Resources and a technical committee member for the Renewable Energy Standards with the Ghana Standards Authority. Furthermore, as the Managing Director for Strategic Power Solutions, oversees a solar PV panel manufacturing plant, contributing to the growth of renewable energy industry. In his role as Senior Technical Manager for the Utility Scale and CI projects at Strategic Security Systems, Engineer Kwate has led numerous significant projects. Notable among them are the development of the 4 megawatt floating solar project at Bui generating stations, the installation of solar powered mechanized boreholes across Ghana, and the implementation of solar street lights in cocoa and coffee growing communities. He has also contributed, he has also conducted energy feasibility studies for over 650 facilities for the Ghana Catholic Church. Engineer Kwate is a professional member of the Ghana Institution of Engineering and a member of the International Association of Engineering, further exemplifying his commitment to professional excellence and continuous learning. Please join with me in welcoming Engineer Kwate, a visionary leader and expert in the renewable energy sector, as he enlightens us on Ghana's energy transition plan. This presentation should provide valuable insights in the current state of affairs, the progress made, and the future prospects for a sustainable energy future in Ghana. Engineer Kwate, good morning. Thank you for making the time to join us this morning, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Listening to this is just like reading a tribute. Anyway, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can clearly see.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay. So, a very good morning to everybody. In fact, it's been one of my early events in a couple of months, and I think it's worth it. Okay, so since my slides are, quite a lot, I will quickly run through so that I'm able to work it within the time allocated. All right, so I was fortunate to be part of the national transition. I think we all have heard a lot about energy transition and also the global transition plan. So this is actually a summary of the document. This document was actually launched by the president in the last COP in Egypt, and I am privileged to share with you what we were able to do. Okay, so I want to know if I change the slide, I want to know if you are following. Are you able to follow chapter 1?
Yes, we can see
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll quickly run through the slides. Yes, I said so. Energy transition, basically is just the pathway towards the transformation of global energy sector from fossil-based fuel to zero carbon by the with IRENA is looking at having the transition by the second half of the century, and a lot of other countries. This is more like a moral commitment. A lot of other countries have had this moral commitment, and Ghana is also part of it. The president, before setting up the committee, the president made us to understand that this is something that we are going to do at our own pace, especially when we just discovered oil, and we all want to see the economic benefit of the oil that we discovered. So just like we've listed, these were some of the considerations that we had. Looking at the Paris Agreement, these are more like moral commitment, because the argument has been that our part of the world is not really emitting. And so, of course, as a moral commitment, and ratifying some of these international protocols, we are also, getting ourselves in preparation to whatever the global focus is. So, Ghana, as we all know, has ratified agreement with the Paris Agreement, which focuses on reduction of global emissions. We've also ratified the protocols and on the sustainable development goals, and the SDG 7 looks at the ensure affordable and reliable sustainable modern energy for all. The COP, as we most of the time, I think this year we are looking at COP 28, that will be in Dubai. That focuses on investment. That focuses on investment on green energy initiatives. Local content. Our focus to net zero is to look at mitigation measures that will reduce emission to let us have the net zero. And so these are some of the benefits and adverse impacts, because as we are transitioning, those that are building career, for example, in the oil and gas sector, are looking at the impact. If we are looking at going green, if we are looking at going clean and all that, there is a benefit, and also there is an adverse impact in whatever focus that we are looking at. And so some of the benefits are, at the end of the day, we are going to have diversity in the supply, in our energy supply mix. There is an opportunity to commercialize. As we know, I think we've heard about a lot of carbon credits and all that. So there's an opportunity for Ghana to also commercialize our credits. That is the strategies that we are doing to achieve carbon credits. We are going to have an improvement in quality. As we all know, people drive these IC vehicles, and we all see a lot of carbon monoxide emissions. And so if our focus is to have a transition, that means we are going to get electric vehicles other than the IC, the internal combustion engine vehicles. We're also going to have a contribution towards reduction in the long term. This is actually in the long term. This was manifested in the forecasting that we did. The forecasting that we did gave us evidence that there's going to be a reduction in our cost of energy. And of course, there is going to be job creation. Some of the potential adverse effects are energy security, because if we are changing what we have currently to clean energy, the point is that will it be sustainable enough? Are we going to be able to get an energy source that is going to sustain our base load? These are some of the questions. There's going to be reduced funding for fossil-related projects, and as you know, we get funding for our exploration and the exploitation of our oil resources. There's going to be potential stranded assets. That is investment that has gone into the oil and gas sector, for example. What is going to be used? What is going to be the use of it? There's going to be job losses. Those that are building career, for example, in the university, in other professionals relating to the fossil industry, are they going to lose their jobs? And also potential revenue loss in terms of whatever you were getting from the fossil industry. So in our objective for the National Energy Transition Plan, we actually, had a certain focus to be able to draw the plan, and also that made us to identify, viable pathways for the country to transition towards carbon neutrality within a secure, efficient energy sector. Just like we saw, we need to do this transition so that we don't have the impact of energy security. We are also looking at harnessing opportunity for a fair and equitable energy transition as the country relies on carbon-intensive industries for economic growth. A lot of our industries now rely heavily on carbon base for their energy, and so we are looking at an opportunity that will create a fair and equitable environment. So we also had a focus to evaluate the impacts of energy transition on the economy. A lot of countries have developed, the argument sometimes has been that these Westerners have developed with this oil and even coal and all the sources that they call clean. And so now why are they pushing this on our neck, especially when you look at the whole of Africa? Emissions are nothing compared to one country in Europe, or I wouldn't even talk about China. So we are looking at some of this impact, and as part of the plan, we develop a medium to long-term targets policy in achieving the carbon neutral economy. And finally, we had to estimate the cost involved, because the Bible even says that when you want to build a house, you have to look at your pocket, whether you are able to build it, and you don't start and in the end, so in the middle, like you just get stuck. So the processes of drawing the plan, we had an initial deck study analysis on the current energy documents and policies that we had. We have the energy policy, we have the renewable energy master plan, we have the IPSMP. We have a lot of these documents that is guiding development or investment in the country. So all these were looked at. We looked at the gas master plan. We looked at all the documents and policies that are currently in the country, and also other international policies relating to energy that is also having an impact on us. So we had a deck study analysis. After that, we did a draft and we did a regional stakeholder consultation on focus interest groups, because it has to be something that the country has to own. And so we touch base with the legal sector, we touch base with the health, we touch base with academia, we touch base with local government, we touch base to all other interested parties that are going to be impacted in this plan. And finally, we did a modeling analysis in drafting the transition plan. And so we did a lot of forecasting, because our target is to look at 2070. And so we had, a lot of forecasting to do. And finally, we went through a validation process for people to own the plan. Okay, so we will look at the current situation of our energy sector. So I wouldn't bore you so much. So this is currently this is the overview as at 2021. We all know that thermal is, for example, taking a chunk of our generation. Hydro is about 29%, thermal is about 68%, and the renewables, which we consider as the current clean energy generation, is only 3% in terms of the installed capacity that we have. Okay. So this is also the structure of the generating plants that we have. If you see the sector on thermal, we have a lot of plants in thermal, and if you look at the sector on renewables, even though we have a couple of them, it is not that much. and also hydro. We know that our current hydro plant at Akosombo, Bui, and also the plant. Okay, so with the petroleum sector, we looked at the upstream, and the upstream is where we have all the exploration and the production and all that. So this is a couple of the production fields that we have: the Jubilee, the TEN, and the SGN. And as at we actually had major substantial crude export somewhere in 2011 from 24.7 barrels to million barrels to 55.4 and 55.4 by the end of 2021. We also have the natural gas supply, so that is domestic. We are looking at Jubilee, TEN, and SGN, and also we know that we import N gas from Nigeria. Okay. So on the petroleum sector, also when we are looking at the infrastructure, we are looking at the investment that we've had in infrastructure. We have the floating production storage and offloading, that's the FPSO vessels and the associated subsea infrastructure. We also have welding fabrication facility that has been established to support the subsea, and we also have the subsea gas export pipeline. Okay, and this is also within the downstream. We know that we are doing some investment also in the downstream, looking at petroleum products that are locally produced by TOR. And also there are other investments that is in Ghana Gas. So this is a little, because of time, I will just quickly, in fact, I'll share the slides with the team so that you can have access to. This is also, so we also consider petroleum products. So we considered everything along the value chain within the petroleum sector, within other energy sectors. So we considered petroleum sector because when we go forward, you see that Ghana's investment in the petroleum sector actually increased our emissions. And so we took our time to actually have an extensive focus on the petroleum sector. And so we looked at everything across the value chain and even the supply chain. And this is also on petroleum products. These are some of the key infrastructure development when it comes to the petroleum products within the downstream sector. So let's go to our greenhouse gas emissions. So as we can see, just like I was saying, this is the current structure of our greenhouse. We have emissions in the energy. This is industry, process, production, and utilization. We have in the agriculture sector. So one may ask why agriculture sector? We do a lot of mechanization in the agriculture sector, and so all these things contribute to emissions. And we also have emissions coming from the waste, and we have LULUCF, that is land use, utilization, change, and forestry. That is the LULUCF. So if you look at the graph, if you look at the spikes, if you look at the spikes somewhere in 2011, there were major spikes in 2011 and somewhere in 2017. These were, if you may recall, these were years that we had major discoveries, and also we did a lot of these exploration where Ghana actually, discovered significant commercial value in terms of in our oil and gas sector. And so you could see the spikes in terms of our emissions that somewhere in 2011 and somewhere in 2017, like we had these spikes, and these contributed significantly to the emissions. So the total emission from 1990 to 2019, as categorized by source, when we break it down, we are seeing emissions from CO2 from CH4, from N2, from PFS, and from HFS. So these, we also took our time to go through emissions from 1990 to 2019. And so we realized that in the past 3 decades, CO2 emissions from the energy sector increased 11-fold from 2.5 metric tons of CO2 to 26.4 metric tons of CO2 emitted. And we realized that carbon dioxide remained the largest greenhouse gas source in Ghana, representing about 70% in 2019. And so this is also another breakdown in emissions. So initially, total emission by sector in 1990, we realized that the agriculture sector was contributing to a lot of these emissions. This was as at 1990. But in 2019, we realized that the energy sector was competing with the agri sector. So energy sector was contributing about 46%, and the agri sector was contributing about 45%, which is a key concern that we look at the practices that we are doing in the energy sector. And so this is also, so we also, eventually we looked at the energy sector, and we had to also dissect the contributions within the energy sector. So we looked at manufacturing, industry and construction. We looked at transport, other sources, and we also looked at the oil and gas, as I think I've already shared some time there. So just like I said, we had a look at the national policy that we currently have, the objectives, the plans, and the targets. And so we looked at what we have now. So for example, in the electricity sector, electricity subsector within the energy side, we have documents that is guiding the investment into the country, like the IPSMP, that's the Integrated Power Sector Master Plan. We have the REMP, Renewable Energy Master Plan. We have energy efficiency LIs. Parliament has passed a lot of LIs regarding that, the Energy Commission is using regarding energy efficiency. And we also have the National Electricity Master Plan. And these all have their targets. The REMP has a target to about 2030. The National Electricity Master Plan also has a target to 2025 to achieve universal access. And as we know, universal access is not just 100%. If we are able to even cross the 90% mark, we can say that we've been able to achieve universal access. And I think the target by the current administration is to achieve universal access by 2025. I think the current rate is about 86 or 87. Okay, so there is a plan also on bioenergy. In the petroleum side, just like we saw in the graph before, a lot of things were being done. And when we started the exploitation of the oil and gas sector, we had a lot of gas flaring, which was contributing to these emissions. So that is where we can see the spikes. And so currently in the petroleum sector, there is a zero gas flaring policy. The gas master plan also focuses on the usage of power generation and non-power use. We have the national LPG promotion policy. We have the national fuel quality policy. That is to reduce sulfur content in the transport and industrial fuels from a maximum of 5,000 ppm to a maximum of 50 ppm. In the transport sector, there was a 2020 transport policy that intends to reduce emission through the use of improved vehicle technologies, better traffic management. We all keep our vehicles in traffic, and we are burning a lot of fuels. And this is not just, an impact on the economy, but also is contributing to, emissions. Sometimes you are behind somebody, and you can see that if you don't roll your windows, you yourself, you can't even breathe in your vehicle. We also have the Ghana Automotive Development Policy that is to improve vehicle safety and other environmental standards. So we looked at the Ghana net zero transition pathways. What are some of the pathways that we can, start looking at to be able to develop our net zero? And this made us to look at the current economic indicators. So since we started drafting this, we looked at the current base scenario, and so we looked at GDP, our population, the urban share, and also electricity access. And with electricity access, we went down to look at the national, the rural savannah, and also the other rural. So as of 2021, these were the figures that we had. And we did a forecasting to look at our GDP as at 2070. As at 2021, we had a GDP of 79.1 with an annual average growth of 5%, which is fair. I think for all projections across the globe, they used a fair rate of about 5%. And so we equally use the same assumptions to do our projections. And we were looking at a GDP of about $863.7 billion. We projected our population to about 72.2 with an average growth of 2%. We also did a projection around 1% to the urban share, which was giving us 85. And so these were some of the base assumptions that the committee looked at to be able to do the projections for the forecasting that we did. So in our scenarios, we did a lot of, we did about 4 scenarios. The business as usual scenario. The business as usual scenario is assuming we don't do anything, assuming the country doesn't take any step, assuming we don't, commit to any international protocol, or we don't make any commitment into this net zero cliche. What is going to be the scenario? So we were still going to keep gas thermal in the energy sector. We're going to keep gas thermal as the base load. So you can see that from 2020 to 2070, we're keeping the base load to be a chunk of the investment was going to be in gas thermal. Hydro was still going to, even though hydro has its own utilization period, the hydropower that we have, you could see that it was gradually shrinking because we also projected that there will be a lot of climate impact in the dams, and some of these dams also last for 100 or over 100 years. So we know that some of these, dams like Akosombo was going to reduce in its utilization. Renewables, there's some investment, but it's not encouraging. So you can see that renewables is not that evident. And we also looked at nuclear, investment in nuclear. We're going to also look at investment in nuclear, but we are not looking at, seeing major investment in nuclear. So after this scenario, we actually looked at the advantages. One of the advantages was that there was going to be no investment because this is a business as usual. We were still going to continue with our current practices and not make any significant investment in our energy sector because, who cares? Nobody cares about the world flooding or, we losing or, our children living better than us. And the associated risk are, down there. Let's look at the first scenario, or the T1 scenario. That's a transition scenario. In the T1 scenario, as you can see, this is, you can see there is significant investment in nuclear, power. So the T1, so I just read the preamble. This scenario includes the use of nuclear power for generation, use of carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology, use of compressed natural gas, electric, hydrogen fuel cells, sustainable aviation fuel, efficient energy transformation processes, and efficient end-use appliances. So this scenario actually considered a lot of the investment in strategies or technologies that we consider as clean. We brought everything on board. And so because nuclear, for example, nuclear power has a very high availability. That is when, for example, when you invest in, let's say, 1 megawatt nuclear, you are going to get, let's say if you invest in 100 megawatt nuclear, you're going to get about 90 megawatt of the power from nuclear. I think it has the most availability in terms of the energy you are getting. Solar, for example, has an availability of about 23 or 25%. Some R&D has gone into solar that makes it about 30%. So when you invest in, let's say, 100 megawatt solar, you are actually getting about 30 megawatt from it. Hydro, depending on availability of your reservoir, or I mean the inflows to your reservoir, sometimes you have very high, sometimes you have very low. And the gas thermal also has its own availability due to fuel, and sometimes you're exposed to some of these risks. So this scenario, with high investment in nuclear, give us very high availability of energy. We are looking at 2070, we are looking at an energy availability of about 350,000 gigawatt hours, and that is very significant. The advantages is that you have high energy security due to that the diversified base load. You have access to future green trade market because you've exposed yourself to all the clean strategies that are available. Some of the associated risks is that you have very high investment costs because of the CCUS. The carbon capture utilization technology is that when you are, for example, doing things that are emitting carbon, you capture the carbon and you bury it, for example, under the sea, or you bury it under the land. Some of the risk to it is a very expensive technology process. Some of the risk is that some of these carbon can leak. You can have leakage and it can get back into the environment. So the CCUS is being practiced, but at the moment, it's not really being commercialized because it's an expensive technology. The T2 scenario also looked at huge investment into the gas thermal. And so this scenario considers everything under the transition scenario 1, but excludes the use of nuclear. So in this scenario, there is no nuclear. You can see that there is no blue thing. So this scenario was considered with the assumption that there will be constant supply of indigenous natural gas. But evidently, as we know, I think recently we heard Gridco also saying that even we had some issues with the Atuabo and all that. So it is also a tricky one. It's a tricky scenario. We may have our own indigenous natural gas, but its availability sometimes is a little tricky. So we considered this as well. The advantages to this is that we can meet future electricity demand due to fuel switch, because now I think we are using natural gas, I mean LNG, and it is more clean. I mean, natural gas has been considered globally as a transition fuel. That means it's clean. And the associated risk is that there is high investment cost because you have to, if we have to continue this, we have to introduce the CCUS technology, the carbon capture utilization storage. The T3 scenario considers everything under the transition scenario 1, but excludes the use of nuclear power. This still excludes the use of nuclear power. This scenario was considered with the assumption that, I think this is, so let's go to the T4. So the T4 is a similar, it's similar to the business as usual scenario, but includes the use of natural gas as a preferred fuel power. So in this case, we are using, natural gas as a preferred. So you can see that the base load, our base load, for example, for the country is just the natural gas, and preferred for power, transport, industrial use. So this scenario assumes like reliable and adequate supply of natural gas and adequate adoption of electric vehicles, and hydrogen will be a slower compared to the other 3 transition scenarios. The advantage is that since natural gas is internal, it is a low investment because we have control over our processes, we have control over our own resources. Some of the associated risk is that electricity demand for e-mobility might not be met because countries that are really adopting e-mobility are seeing spikes in their electricity use because you are not able to control the appetite of your citizenry in terms of the electricity. And so, for all you know, people are buying very huge within a short time, and that may not be considered in your annual average demand. And so you might be exposed to those kind of things because everybody might be charging his or her vehicle within a shorter time. And so sometimes the consumption is not, you are not seeing a steady trend in the consumption. And so, I mean, there are associated risks to this scenario too, and there's price volatility of imported gas. For example, if it is indigenous, you have control. If you're importing from elsewhere, you don't have control over it, and so you're exposed to that volatility in terms of your gas. And so let's look at the emission scenarios for all these scenarios. So we first of all consider the BAU. The BAU, that's a business as usual scenario with the transition one scenario. We realize that using nuclear as the base load, so the blue line, as you can see, is actually the business as usual. So the blue line in all these scenarios are the business as usual. If you look at the business as usual, emission is continuing up. You can see a steady rise in emission. So when we compare it to the T1, we can see that the strategies being adopted is bringing down the trend. So that is what we are looking at as the net zero. The net zero is essentially, it's not that you are not going to emit, you are still going to emit, but the strategies that you are doing are reducing your emissions, are bringing it down. And so the T1 scenario, we can see that there is a decline somewhere because the investment in nuclear is going to be very high from, let's say, 2040, somewhere 2055, 52 to 2070. We see a sharp decline in emissions. We see same for T2, that is using gas as the base load. We also see another, decline, right? When we look at T3, there is somehow a reduction in it, but in emissions, but we can clearly see that we are not achieving anything close to net zero. Same with T4. That is T4, considering the BAU slow intro of electric vehicles, hydrogen and biofuels. We are not seeing any significant significant impact in the emissions. Okay, so these were other things that we also considered. We forecasted the cost of the transition. So when we look at this side, BAU, we are not really going to make any major investment. When we look at business as usual scenario, we are not going to make any, significant investment. And also, the production costs, cost in terms of whatever we are doing is not that high, and so business as usual. And so we are still going to emit in the business as usual. In the T1 scenario, for example, we looked at the investment costs. Nuclear, because we are investing in nuclear, it is very high. Nuclear has a high capex, but it has a longer lifespan, and at the end of the day, the levelized cost of nuclear, that is when you look at the lifespan in terms of the availability of energy that you're also having, when you calculate the levelized cost of energy, it is very competitive source of energy. When we look at the T2 scenario, that is using gas as the base load, the investment is not that high because we have control over our gas, and because we have to, make a lot of consideration in CCUS, that's a carbon capture and utilization storage technology, we see that even though the investment is not high, but the production cost in terms of what we have to produce for the country is also very high. So these were some of and we also looked at the generation cost for the various scenarios. So after everything, if you look at the graphs critically, what the team considered was to look at the T1 scenario. The T1 scenario, as we can clearly see, considering a significant investment in nuclear, also with natural gas and renewable. We considered renewable, even though it is intermittent, but it's a clean source. But we're also looking at the base load, which is supporting our industrialization agenda. So in terms of capacity, we are looking at a capacity of about 80,000 megawatt by 2070. And we are looking at total availability of energy around over 350,000 gigawatt hours by 2070. That gives a lot of security for our energy sector. And so we looked at the emissions related to, just like we saw in the graph, we realized that the T1 scenario, we had a lot of, it was very, the T1 scenario even reduced our demand, even reduced the country's demand. And also we were making significant contribution in terms of the emissions. And so we also considered in terms of electricity, we also did a consideration with the business as usual and the energy transition scenario for the recommended transition scenario T1 that we had. And finally, these are some of the strategies that we are looking at. What are we going to do in 2030? What are we going to do in 2040? What are we going to do in 2050? What are we going to do in 2070? So as you can see, there are strategies for 2030, 2040, 2050, and 2070. I can't take you through all of it because of the time and for your contributions. So these were some of the recommended policies that we had a lot of recommendations for decarbonization. So these are some of the policies. If you take your time to go through, these are some of the policies we are looking at with regards to decarbonization. Policies and strategies that are going to support decarbonization for the country. We also had policies and strategies for energy access and security. For example, we're going to prioritize green energy to attract more investment, the National Oil Company to exploit national hydrogen resources to accelerate development. For energy efficiency, these are some of the strategies that we propose. Intensify the promotion of energy efficiency programs, ensure the use of most of the efficient lamps for suitable lighting needs. I think we know about a lot of the things that has been done in energy efficiency. And cross-cutting didn't just focus on the energy sector. So we looked across, what other things can we do, even in investment? Are we going to promote local content and local participation, encourage private sector participation in energy transition, gender, and all that? So, in brief, and not to at least have some time for questions, this is what I have for the team. And thanks very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Engineer, for a very informative and educative presentation. I think, as you rightly said, at this point, I would open the floor for questions from the team so that if anyone has any questions or even contributions, they can also actively participate. Whilst we're waiting to the team or to everyone online, if you have a question for Engineer Kwarteng, you kindly raise your hand and then you'll be called to ask a question. Whilst we're waiting on that, Engineer Kwarteng, I wanted to find out, you mentioned the carbon credit system. Could you elaborate on that for us?
Okay, so in simple, carbon credit is that, for example, for countries, let's say China, that is, and sometimes I think it's not fair to even use China because we all contribute to whatever China is doing. When iPhone 15 comes, all of us will go and buy, but we turn around to go and say that China is polluting. We are all contribution to, the pollution. So let's say with everything that China is doing, China is not doing things that are clean. There's a lot of production in China, and so they are emitting a lot. And so China will want to, if there are other countries that are not really, let's say, doing what they are doing that is contributing to, let's say, pollution, they want to invest in other countries that are, doing things that are rather saving the environment. And so we can, the programs and policies that we are doing in our country, we can turn them into carbon credits. So we turn around that, you know what, bring us money, let's invest in whatever we are doing, because you people are not doing things that are clean. Come and buy credits for it to feature in your sustainability report, or your annual sustainability report, or even some of your, so how do I even put this? Like your catcher that you are doing, let it feature that you're also committed to even the environment. And so you are giving support to some of the programs. So we can turn around that, because we are not generating with these gas and this coal and all that, the energy that, let's say, we are selling to others, come and put money in it, come and buy this credit. If you have companies that are here, come and patronize that energy and give us money in return, so that we can continue to do things that are clean. So that, let's say that, let me give that classical explanation of carbon credit. There's a whole lot when it comes to the market, entering the market, registering your asset, registering the devices, the renewable energy devices and all that. It's a little complicated. It's an evolving market that is coming within the clean energy industry. But in short, that would be the explanation that I'll give.
Okay, thank you very much. That'll actually lead me to a follow-up question, but I see Stanley's hand is up. So Stanley, kindly share your question.
Hi, good morning to you all. And first of all, Engineer Quality, very, very great presentation, very insightful and informative. I just have a question regarding the incentives that, if there are any incentives which will be provided for private participants, like ordinary citizens who maybe want to install renewable energy sources to drive the generation of energy for their homes. Is there any incentives that the government is planning? For example, maybe when an individual installs solar panels to generate electricity for their homes, and at the end of the month or the year, they use less energy than is generated. Is there a way that they can, for example, sell it back to the grid? Can they be awarded for something like that? Such incentives, are there anything in place for the future?
Yeah, so rightly as you said, these are some of the, the things that whet people's appetite to invest in alternative sources. So I think it's somewhere in 2015, the government was piloting the net metering scheme, just like you were describing. So, for example, I'm in the office now. If I install solar in my house, it's still generating. The sun is coming up. I'm not using the power. In the evening, I'll turn around to go and use the grid. So whatever I generate can be pushed to the grid, so that whatever I consume in the evening will be offsetted. So the government actually piloted it, except that initially it was a one-to-one offset. And because whatever we were generating was being pushed back to the grid, but the grid was an investment by a DISCO, that's a distribution company, ECG, or NEDCO, wherever you find yourself. So those investments that the distribution companies had initially, done, they were saying that, you know what, you can't use our investment to push back, then you come and enjoy the same that you take from us. We can recognize yours, let's say a smaller percentage. Let's say I'm recognizing your energy, each unit of energy, I'm recognizing that maybe 30%. But whatever you are consuming from me is 100%. So PRC, I think, currently has been able to bring a tariff structure. I think it was early this year, yeah. So they've been able to bring a proper structure for the offset. So currently it's been piloted, and I think the government is doing about 1,000 public buildings that will be on net metering, also for a pilot. I think last year was a grant of about $80 million for this project. And this has to be encouraged, just like you said, because that is the only thing that will make people, invest in solar. Because if there's no doom, sorry, nobody will want to invest in solar. So these are things that individuals can. So yes, it's been piloted, and I'm sure that some of these plans and policies should be able to push for it to be have a national focus so that everybody can enjoy. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Beryl, I see your hand is up. You have a question for me.
Hello, engineer. Good morning, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for. Hello.
Yes, Beryl, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you for the insightful presentation. Engineer, my take is on like we doing the offsetting. Are we also planning towards carbon sinks, like promoting communities, individuals to also shift to carbon takings? And also, how is government educating the communities? Everybody, how are they collaborating to let everybody come on board? Because as the first person said, like we are using solar, like we have sun throughout the year. So what are some of the policies that can be used so that at least every house should get a solar panel or something? So that's my first question for that.
Okay, thank you, Bill. So yes, it's part of the whole strategy. When we look at the various strategies on the carbon offset, we actually considered. In fact, I'll share the actual policy document with Constromat, and I'm sure you can have access to it. So it's been detailed extensively. All these strategies have been detailed extensively in the policy document, and we are just at the implementation stage. There will be a lot, some of these policies, as new technologies or new plans come, we try to also adopt it. With the, education, yes, this has been one of the challenges when some of these plans are being, introduced or adopted in the country. With academia, one thing that we're really looking at is to get it into the various curriculum, just like these SDG goals somehow have been gotten into some of the curriculum. So it's something that we are looking at, and also, for the informal sector, find a way to also, educate them further. Some of the programs are being done in the informal sector, like improved cook stoves and all that. But sometimes it's not, people rather see it as a gift. They don't see why they are even using all these things. So, I agree with you, and all these things will be considered for the committee to also look at in terms of implementation.
Okay, thank you very much. Jacqueline, I believe you have a question for Classing. Hello, Jacqueline.
Hello. Good
Hi,
morning.
good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Engineer, for the insightful presentation. So I have one question. So I wanted to find out, in terms of biogas, you mentioned biogas form 3% of the energy capacity in Ghana. I wanted to find out what's the source of waste or what it's used for the biogas. And also to mention, you mentioned there is emission from waste and landfill. Is there any way the policy is making provision to also derive energy from these emissions in the national grid?
Sorry, I didn't get the last question, please. Can if you can repeat.
Okay, so the last question is there a way that the policy makes provisions to make use of the energy or emissions from waste and landfill gas in the national grid?
Okay, so thank you. When we look at waste to energy, I think some of there have been some interventions recently. I think somewhere in either 2021, I was still at ministry, so we went to commission a plant somewhere in the that was waste to gas, and it was one of the significant, investment in waste to gas. There is also one in Ashaman. I think there's another waste to gas plant in Ashaman that we also, seeing how, except that it's not connected. These plants are not connected to the grid. They are actually connected at the distribution level. Yeah, because of other intermittencies. So I think the government is looking at investment into the waste to gas, except that some of these investment, so there is when there is a feasibility done on some of these technologies, there is a technical side, looking at the technical viability and also looking at the commercial viability, except that some of this investment, when you look at the levelized cost of energy, is very expensive. It is very expensive. So the government sometimes try to subsidize the cost of those investment, and so getting it into a commercial scale, it is very difficult. And the other question was on biogas, right? Your other question was on biogas. You wanted to know the various sources in biogas generation. Was that the case?
Yes.
Okay. So when we look at the biogas, a lot of things go into it. We have, so I think you said bioenergy. We have the biofuels. We have even wood fuels. There's a whole cluster. When it comes to that side of the energy in our plan. So we looked at one thing that we were considering is that as much as we are looking at availability of those sources in terms of our energy output, we are also looking at the various costs related to it, whether commercially is viable to the country and all that. So these are all considerations that in terms of the forecasting, when you look at the national energy outlook, there is significant focus on bioenergy, except that sometimes the notion has been that it is usually used in the informal sector, right? So the other interventions that the country is doing to actually, have, investment that are clean towards, these areas. Yes. So I think we shared a lot of light also in in this area, and I'm sure when I share the actual plan document, you'll be able to see the various considerations that we've made for this sector as well.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline, for the question and for the insight. We are currently pressed for time, so I'll be taking one last question from the audience, and then we'll wrap up the session. Mr. Charles Okuri, I believe you have a question for Engineer Partey.
Okay, thank you, Max, for the presentation. I learned a lot. So my question has to do with renewable energy. So we know one of the challenges with the conventional sources of energy has to do with transmission losses. So where the generation station is far and then you transmit over a very long distance, there's transmission losses. And then one advantage of renewable energy, especially PV, is its modular ability to be installed like on households. So why is it that we still have companies still installing large PV and still transmitting it over a very long distance when these PV can be installed within the communities to cut down on transmission losses?
Okay, so just like you said, I mean the modular way of generation from renewable, for example, solar is one of the advantage. Just like you said, it can be used for captive generation. That is when you install within your own site and you are using the energy that you are generating. Alternatively, when you want to look at, I mean, using renewables, for example, solar for utility scale, it depends on your, for you to reduce transmission losses, it depends also on your design. If you are siting your evacuation point very far away from your generating source, you are going to have significant transmission losses, just like you said. And also the design of your cables and even your transmission, your T&D network, your transmission and distribution network, you're going to have, those losses, right? But if, for example, you site your evacuating, there is a certain voltage that you generate within your generating station, and there is a certain voltage that you evacuate. So it depends on how your design is, especially when you're using it for the utility scale or when you're pushing it to the grid. And so for those that have those significant losses, what happens is that maybe the evacuation point is actually sited very far away. The cables are not, designed well or sized well, and so you are going to have those things. So it depends on, it's still an evolving industry, and it depends on how the design is. If you do your design very well, I'm not sure you are going to have that significant transmission losses, except that intermittency might be the issue. But even intermittency, now there is a solution to streamline that. There are battery interventions that are able to reduce these intermittencies to the grid, especially when you are generating at a high scale.
Thank you.
I think you are muted.
Yes, sorry about that. Thank you. I see Yvonne also has a question. I think we would allow a little time because there are quite a number of questions coming in Engineer Patton, so please pardon us. Yvonne, I believe you have a question for Engineer Patton.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your presentation, Engineer Patton. So my question is, are there any plans to enhance the capacity and expertise of Ghana's energy sector workforce, that is to support the transition to renewable energy? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Yvonne. So, aside the continuous professional development that is happening within the industry, now, for example, China is actually helping the energy sector with a lot of programs, and also other innovations that they've started doing in their country. Other countries are doing the same, and they give the as far as I know, there is significant partnership when it comes to government, these bilateral relations. Within let's say a country, doing something locally, what can be adopted is that these things has to be also looked at. For example, there are some partnerships going on. For example, WePower, for example, is having a partnership with UNEL, University of Energy and Natural Resources. I sit on the Industrial Advisory Board. These are some of the recommendations that we, as an industry person, we review their curriculum to let it tailor-made to the current trends that are, happening in terms of even what is being taught to students in the classroom. And so that, the students will have a real understanding of where the trends are not just coming out to be an engineer, but having an engineer to create an impact. Of course, like Oliver Twist, I mean, the government will have to do more if there is actual commitment to these plans, not just letting some of these documents, I mean, collect dust on the, on the shelves, but work, the talk. Initially, it's expensive, but of course, if we have to do it, we have to do it well. So I agree. I mean, we have to call for more, advocacy into the education and also the support towards it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Daniel, you can go ahead with your question.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Engineer Barton, for the wonderful presentation. Can you please provide some examples of successful renewable energy projects or initiatives already underway in Ghana that supports the objectives of the transition plan? Thank you.
Oh, I think there is significant, number of projects that we all, have. Recently, Bui Power, for example, did a total of 5 megawatt floating solar. I think it's the biggest in Africa, where panels are on the river. In fact, it was one project that I was privileged to join. Bui Power, for example, has another 50 megawatt that is connected to the grid that we all, enjoy. There is a 20 megawatt that was done in Mankwazi in the central region. There is another one that was done also in the central region. The other captive generations that individuals are having. Even the Jubilee House is doing about 900, almost 900 kilowatt, also to show its commitment to the renewable energy. So there are pockets of projects that are being done, except that because there has to be a proper grid impact study to the grid. You know, the intermittency with renewable, sometimes you have the sun coming down, the sun going up. You have to ensure some stability with the integration so that the grid, the investment in the grid is not disturbed. Because if the sun is going down, you have voltage losses. It's going to create a disturbance within the grid. I mean, all across the globe. I mean, these are some of the things. So into the grid, I think Bui Power is the only biggest plant that is integrated into the grid, and currently it's just 50 megawatt. I think, but there are plans to do about 250. So there are pockets of projects that gradually are coming. Except that even in our transition plan, we considered key investment also into the grid. There were key investment that, because the grid will have to be able to, we need to improve the technology to be able to also sustain the injection of these intermittent renewables.
Okay, thank you very much. Antoinette has a question. She would like to know, she would ask, she's asking that you kindly elaborate on some of the ways the energy sector is prioritizing green energy to attract investment.
Okay, so for example, there is participation. So COP, for example, as I indicated in I think the first slide, COP looks at key investment into the energy side. So for example, and I think COP, we've taken COP seriously. The president even participates in COP. If not him, I'm sure even the vice president participates in COP. As far as I've come to know about COP, this has been areas where you have a lot of, green funds that want to come in. So a lot of the time, issues with these green funds is security, how they can securitize the funds that are coming in, because these funds are not commercial funds. They are very soft. But these people that have these, green funds want to make sure that it's being used for the purpose it's intended for. Not that we bring you like $500 million and you use it for infrastructure projects other than what it's intended for. So sometimes there are other road shows that these other international renewable bodies also do. And the other investment portfolios that the country also participates in, because over here, one thing with renewables is that it has a high capex. Sometimes because the investment is over a period, you have a low OPEX. These are not, most of them are not mechanical units. For example, solar, you don't have a lot of mechanical units. Wind, you may have it being mechanical because you have a rotating unit. And so the CapEx is the issue. So getting the money to do the project is sometimes the issue. But if you're able to align your documentations and also your commitment, I'm sure you'll be able to attract some of these funds that are available.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Cotton. Throughout your presentation, I've heard you mention pockets of sources for funding some of these plans. I've mentioned the carbon credit, there's the green funding. Could you elaborate more on some of the predicted or anticipated sources of major funding for these projects?
Okay, so I know the Climate Investment Fund, that is CIF, is actually a fund by the European body where you have other European countries committing to, these funds. So, for example, Germany is usually involved in some of these. You have Switzerland, you have, you have Denmark, you have a lot of these. So the Climate Investment Fund, even AFDB, the African Development Bank, is equally the recent grant of about $80 million that the country got. It was a commitment from AFDB and also CIF and even SECO. So there are some of these bodies that are hugely committed to the investment of the industry, and most of them. So I think even Energy Commission locally, Energy Commission Energy Commission launched the SunRef program, where Ghana Commercial Bank, I think EcoBank is even applying to get the funds. So these international bodies are looking at how they can securitize the funds that they bring in. Most of the time, they'll bring the fund in, for example, at 3%. The banks that are supposed to be the holders of the fund will turn these funds into a commercial facility, which doesn't make investment into this area very competitive. So now, Energy Commission now is going to be, for example, the regulator on these funds. Make sure that if there's $100 million coming in from these green fund bodies, it's coming in, and the banks are going to make sure that people get it, even if they have to put something on 3%, maybe maximum 5%, not going for it at 11 or 13% as a commercial facility. So locally, SunRef, Energy Commission is actually, and the applications, they've actually opened applications that if you want to, for example, run your own solar company, even do a project, do your own solar, you can apply for these funds to be paid on your behalf so that you don't take these kind of plant and devices as a commercial facility, local commercial facility that we all can't even take loan from. So these are some of the local bodies and international bodies that are looking at investment into the industry.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Kwarteng. Unfortunately, we are pressed for time, and we may not be able to allow for any more questions. We'll have to wrap up the session. So to conclude, I would like to say a very big thank you for Engineer Kwarteng for making time to join us this morning. This has been very informative, very educated, and we are grateful that you were able to make the time to join us. Present on Ghana's energy transition plan, and you have provided us with valuable insights and a deep understanding of the steps that are being taken towards a sustainable energy future. We all appreciate your expertise in highlighting the objectives, the challenges, the opportunities that are available for the transition. I would ask that we all apply the knowledge in our own lives, make meaningful contributions as a collective towards Ghana's energy transition. Thank you once again, Engineer Kwarteng, for sharing your expertise and inspiring us to be agents of change in this very important journey. Okay, so thank you, Engineer.
Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate your early morning and the opportunity as well. I think with my name, I'm available on Facebook and maybe other social media platforms, so we can catch up some other time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we will be wrapping up our session now, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.